Hello Internet! Happy New Year! After a nice break from work and a brief hiatus from making videos, one of the first things that I did in 2018 was binge watch Season 4 of Black Mirror. I am a huge fan of this show and I have been eagerly anticipating this season. I do have to say it was fairly hit or miss, and I thought it would be fun to make a video ranking all 6 episodes of Black Mirror Season 4 from worst to best. These are just going to be my personal opinions of the episodes. I'm not going to be super in-depth, but there will probably still be some spoilers when we kind of do an overview of the episodes. Eventually, I do want to do an in-depth look at some of these episodes because I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff to discuss. But for now, I think an overview of the season seems like a good place to start. So, without further ado, let's just start with number 6 on my list, and that is Metalhead. I was honestly very bored by this episode. This episode wasn't paced very well. Somehow, the entire episode is basically an extended chase scene, and they managed to have a lot of moments that really took the tension out of the scene. There's literally a moment where this woman is hiding in a tree and she waits for the thing's battery to power down before moving on. And it's like a cute idea, but there's so little else going for the story besides the chase that I think you really have to pace it a lot better. They also made the stylistic decision to shoot in black and white. I'm not sure why they did that. I think it was supposed to be kind of in reference to old sci-fi and old horror movies. But if you're going to go for that aesthetic, then I feel like you need to go for it more in the plot as well. And the story just felt extremely oversimplified and not particularly immersive. I found myself checking my phone. I found myself not really caring what happened next. And this episode, mercifully, was shorter than a lot of the other episodes this season. But I'd have to say it was the most disappointing overall. It just didn't work for me. Number 5 on my list is Crocodile, and this one I saw the preview for, and I actually thought that I was really going to love this episode because it's an interesting idea. It is one that has been used in Star Trek before, using people's memories as testimony in a crime and things like that. But in this case, I liked that the main character was the insurance adjuster. Well, I guess she's not necessarily the main character since she gets brutally murdered, and so does her entire family. The main character is actually the lady with the "I know what you did last summer" plotline, where she and her boyfriend accidentally killed a bicyclist while driving along intoxicated and then threw his body in a lake, and then eventually the past comes back to haunt her, so she starts murdering people. And it's just it feels really convoluted, and I was really disappointed that it did not take advantage of the tech in the way that Black Mirror usually does. Usually the point of the episode is the implications of the technology and what that means for humanity and what it means to be human, and it's a lot more interesting in terms of a story. In this case, the twist at the end, where the kid is blind but she's going to be caught because of the guinea pig, so all of these murders were completely pointless, like, that just felt unnecessary and kind of depressing, and it didn't really have all that much to say about the implications of the technology itself. You know, you could have told the same story, the exact same story, without actually using this technology in the story, and you would only have had to change a few things, and I think that's kind of the problem. Is it doesn't really centralize around the kinds of ideas that usually work in Black Mirror, and it just relies on a relatively unoriginal and just bleak story. I was not super pleased with this episode either, and I was really disappointed by it. I thought it was going to be a lot better. Number 4 on my list is Hang the DJ, and I have to say I really enjoyed this episode. It was pretty obvious that it was trying to be San Junipero again for this season, but honestly, Black Mirror gives you so little in the way of actual happy endings that I really didn't mind that much. I thought that while the story was a little bit iffy in that it just seemed like there were a lot of contrivances to get to the end result of them being in a simulation and just being in a regular dating app, I I thought that the characters were really likable and their connection was really good, and so I ended up enjoying the episode anyway. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but I like cheesy things, so I definitely didn't hate this episode. I'll probably watch this one again. I thought that there were definitely some enchanting little moments in it, and it did make me think about things a little bit, so it was definitely an okay episode. It wasn't remarkable or amazing like some other episodes we've seen in previous seasons, but it wasn't terrible either, and I'll definitely give it another look. Number 3 on my list is Black Museum, and I know for a lot of other people this will probably rank a lot higher. For me, I found it to be very derivative of White Christmas, and I think that White Christmas did it better. I do like the guy who plays the Carney-like museum proprietor. I think he does a really good job, and I like the main character who he's giving the tour to as well. But one of the first story that he tells with the pain-addicted murder doctor is just gross, to be honest. The second one, I just didn't find it very believable. It seemed ridiculous. Like, the idea that they transferred the mother's consciousness into a teddy bear and then would never explain it to the kid, so the kid just discards it, that seems unbelievably cruel. And with how the main character grappled so much with making that decision in the first place, I just find it hard to believe. So, you know, in my opinion, I thought there were some great parts to this episode. I think the ending of this episode is really what saved it. And I think I saw the twist coming a few minutes before it was actually revealed because the build-up started to make a lot of sense. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good episode. I like that it did continue to experiment with all the different cognitive technologies, and that's some of Black Mirror's stronger stuff, so I thought that that was cool. I also really liked all of the different exhibits in the museum because a lot of them were from different episodes of Black Mirror, including some previous seasons, and that was kind of fun to just see all these little references and Easter eggs littered around the episode. We usually see here and there connections in different episodes to remind you that it's in the same universe, but having it so explicit was really, really fun, and I did enjoy this episode, although I would definitely say that I think White Christmas did the same thing just so much better. Number 2, I'm actually going to give to Archangel. I thought that Archangel was better than the Black Museum in my opinion because it told a more cohesive story, and I found myself engaged the entire time. We see this girl Sarah grow up from a baby to a teenager, and her mother has put this implant in her head that allows her to monitor everything from her vital signs to what she sees. And the implant can also blur out stressful or frightening imagery. And of course what happens is the child doesn't understand what's happening when her grandpa is having a stroke and so isn't able to call for help, and then later on we see her stabbing herself frantically in the fingers, having kind of like a freak out because she can't see the blood, and it's this whole thing where you really see how much you can disturb a child by hiding parts of their reality from them. And while a lot of the commentary was very on the nose, I still thought that it was a very compelling story, and it was really interesting to see how far they went with it. They really committed to the mom seeing things that she didn't want to see, and then basically dosing her daughter with an emergency contraceptive without telling her after discovering that her daughter was pregnant using the Archangel system. And it's the invasion of privacy, the complete and utter invasion, and how they really, address the implications of that in this episode, I thought was really effective, and that's why it ranked so high on my list personally. And of course, I'm going to give the number 1 to USS Callister, because if you're going to pander to the Star Trek fans will approve. Or at least I did. I definitely don't mind people pandering to me with Star Trek parodies, especially because it was really fun to see a spoof of Kirk, and I loved the overtly sexist cutout uniforms that were kind of an exaggeration on the original series dress uniforms that the women wore. All in all, this episode just had so much going for it. It had all the weird ethical implications and questions that you lead yourself to ask with a show like Black Mirror, but it also had moments of levity, moments of terror. It had pretty strong acting, and while there were some moments that I felt were pretty contrived and silly, I think that the episode overall was really, really good, and I think it was the one that I enjoyed the most. It's probably the one I'll rewatch the most, and I think that it just had a really, really strong idea and a really strong motivated plot for what it wanted to be, and it stayed on that trajectory without going off on too many tangents, which I liked, because stories like that can tend to get a little bit messy. I like that they didn't spend very much time with non-simulated her, and they spent most of the time with her on the bridge in the simulation, because I think that made it easier to keep the story cohesive. So I really, really enjoyed that one. I thought that that there were some really chilling implications, and God, that scene where the one character describes his son being shoved out the airlock is just horrifying, just traumatizing, and adds this real layer of scariness to this otherwise kind of buffoonish main character, which I thought was a very smart thing to do at that point in the episode, to really, you know, indicate that this guy means business and and he's dangerous. Because I do think Daly's a psychopath, obviously. And yeah, I just thought that the commentary in this episode was really good. The Star Trek references were super fun. The aesthetics were great. I liked the commentary on gamer culture towards the end, where they get merged back into the main game and they accept a trade request with someone and immediately get bitched at. And it's so accurate. So I did really, really, really appreciate that episode. I thought it was great work. I thought it felt like Black Mirror. I enjoyed that it had a kind of, not exactly happy, but a just ending. And all in all, I would definitely recommend this episode. I recommend this season. I do think that this season was pretty hit or miss. Season 3 was as well, though. But the good episodes are really good, and even the bad episodes do have their moments. Black Mirror is a very competent show with a good underlying message that I think makes it so that it's easier for the writers to turn their ideas into good stories while still remaining consistent in their universe. But I think when they do miss, they miss pretty hard. And so the hit or miss nature of this last season, I think they do really need to step up their game a little more if they do a season 5. I think they just need to be a little bit more consistent in terms of the quality of storytelling, maybe also in the length of the episodes. But Black Mirror Season 4 is definitely worth taking a look at, especially if you love sci-fi and if you love horror and thrillers and that kind of genre that always makes you ask uncomfortable questions. So that is everything I have for you for now on Black Mirror Season 4. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. If your rankings differ from mine, that's totally cool. If you super enjoyed Metalhead, right on. I'm not here to tell you to hate something you like. This is just my personal opinion. No hard feelings. So if you like my videos, like and subscribe. If you don't, I'm sure you'll tell me. See you next time. Wiedersehen.